Hello, America. We're living in crazy times. This is the Glenn Beck program. We'll try to make sense of a few things here with Senator Mike Lee, who joins us now. Senator, tell me about what happened in Mexico, and is anything going to be done about this?
Glenn, it's absolutely tragic. Last week, we had 9 innocent people, women and children, American citizens, gunned down in cold blood, murdered, in some cases burnt to death by narco terrorists. This is in our backyard, Glenn. This is an absolute crisis. We've got to do something about it by way of identifying who the attackers were. And we've got to make darn sure that they don't have the ability to attack the American people anymore. It's bad enough that over the last few years, they've killed 250,000 innocent civilians. It's made worse by the fact that they're now moving on to U.S. citizens and doing so in our own backyard.
So the press made a big deal out of these people have a violent history. And what do you know about the family, Mike?
You know, this is not a family with a violent history. The individuals that I talked to, these families are not part of a cult. These families are not even part of an organized religious order at all. They just live down there in peace. Now they're the descendants of people who came to the region to live in religious freedom back in the mid to late 1800s, and they've maintained their identity both as Mexican citizens and as dual U.S. citizens ever since then. But they're a peace-loving people, and there are people who are not extremists in any way. They abide by the law, and they haven't caused anyone any trouble. I'm not sure what the almost fetishistic fixation the New York Times and other publications seem to have with calling them polygamists, which they are not, or fundamentalists, which I don't think they are either. But somehow maybe that makes it easier for them to otherize these victims so as to not make Americans worry about these pesky drug cartels.
These pesky drug cartels pretty much run the state of Mexico now.
Yes, in many areas they do, and they seem to be becoming increasingly brazen in their willingness to go after, in this case, both women and children, which the Sinaloa drug cartel apparently they historically tried to avoid, and also people who are known to be U.S. citizens, as these people were in the area. Everyone knew who they were. They knew they were dual U.S. Mexican citizens. They knew that these people were women and children, and they killed them anyway. That indicates that something more dangerous is afoot than what we've been dealing with in the past.
Right.
And that we really should be concerned. It's one of the many reasons we need a wall.
And there's no reason to believe now that Americans are safe in Mexico. Because if it used to be if you held an American passport, nobody's going to screw with you because the Americans would come down as a bag of bricks on your head and pressure the government to make sure those people paid the price. That's not the truth anymore. Mexico is pretty much controlled by these cartels. The president, I don't know, good or ill, but the president is having to kowtow to these people. And what does this mean for Americans on the border? If they can do this right across the border, what's stopping them from doing it on this side?
It is a scary prospect, and I'm not sure I know what the answer would be.
Well, Mike, does an answer include making these drug cartels terrorist organizations?
Absolutely. And I'm doing everything I can to make sure that the administration has the ability it needs to designate them as such. If we can do that, then all of a sudden we can figure out how they bank. We can stop their ability to transfer money. These are organizations that by some accounts are clearing something like $80 million of profit a day. That money's got to go somewhere. It can't just sit under a mattress. They have to be able to have the ability to transfer it. We can stop a lot of that if we designate them as international terrorist organizations, and that's what I hope they end up doing. Now, meanwhile, AMLO, President Lopez Obrador, has said some things that I hope are just an error in translation. I speak both languages. I'm fluent in Spanish. He had been saying we need to deal with the drug cartels using hugs, not bullets. Abrazos, no boleros. I don't quite understand why he'd use that expression. But then in the wake of these killings last week, he said something along the lines of, the families of these victims just need to forgive the cartels. I don't understand what that has to do with a government response. Obviously, among any Christian believers, forgiveness is an essential thing, but that is not the government's role. The government's role is to see to it that people don't kill each other. And I hope for their own sake and for ours that the Mexican government will get its A game on and decide that, hugs are great. Sometimes they don't work for people who have bullets. Sometimes the only response to somebody who's got bullets and abusing them to kill women and children is more bullets. And that's what we need here.
Mike, are we going to be able to get anything done with the impeachment now? Do you see the impeachment? I see it passing. Do you see Mitch McConnell picking it up and trying it in the Senate? I think it should, because you have to be able to respond to the insanity, and you can't respond to it in the House because of the rules.
That's right. I've had some good conversations with Mitch McConnell about this, and I think he sees it the same way I do, and it sounds like the same way you do, which is that, first of all, under our rules, we have to take it up. We have to hear it. And even if we were not required to, by our own rules, which we are, there would still be a need for us to be able to tell the story, to tell the whole truth, and not just the spin that they're getting in the House of Representatives.
Well, there's no way for the president to even defend himself. You can't call anybody that has anything to do with Chalupa. You can't call her. You can't call the whistleblower. You can't call anybody that wants to talk about the marriage between the state and Soros. You can't talk about the meddling in the election that we know happened, because two people were sentenced to prison for interfering in the U.S. election, and they bragged on tape about how they were helping Hillary and the DNC. You can't talk about any of those things. They're not being allowed. So if you're going to understand what happened, you have to understand the past.
Exactly. You can't tell any part of this story that hasn't been blessed and sanctioned by Adam Schiff and by Nancy Pelosi. And that's disgraceful, especially when you ask the question, cui bono, who benefits? Who benefits from this impeachment trial? Who benefits from an impeachment proceeding in the House where only one side gets to be heard?
Well, honestly, this really goes to, this whole thing is, the way that the left is behaving now. They are acting like an out of control religion. You are silenced if you disagree. You're a heretic and destroyed. And this is the Grand Inquisition. I mean, Pelosi is I guess, or Schiff is Takamata. He creates all of the rules, and the outcome before the trial is even started.
That's right. Or telephone justice, as they used to describe it in the Soviet era. When a criminal trial was going on, if it was a difficult case, the judge would receive a telephone call in whatever distant reaches of the USSR. Somebody from Moscow would tell them what the outcome was. But the fact is, they've been trying to get President Trump since before he was even inaugurated. The only reason Nancy, who deep down knows this is wrong, the only reason she's doing this is because she can't control the squad. She can't control her own party. And so she feels like she has to do it. But things like this have consequences. Those consequences are dire. And we have to ask the question, well, what becomes of this? If you do this, where does it lead? And is that really responsible for the American people, especially for a president who didn't do anything wrong? But if this is what it's going to take for us to tell the rest of the story and to show how so many people in the Democratic establishment have abused the levers of government power, so be it. But President Trump is going to emerge from this process stronger.
So, Mike, tomorrow night, I am doing another broadcast. This one is the Democrats' Hydra. And as I was going through all of the information, your name popped up. And you're actually in this special. And it is because you seem to question something that was happening in Macedonia and said, something's not right here. And you're right. And you filed a letter with, I think, the State Department asking why we were funding some things that we were funding. I don't know if you ever got a response back, but I have the answer for you tomorrow on what was going on. Did they ever respond back to you?
Whatever response I got was somewhat inadequate to what I was seeking. Yeah, I started seeing some disturbing trends. I've got some friends in Macedonia, and they were pointing out to me that Macedonia was a friend to the United States. Macedonia, at one point in the very recent past, had a government that was friendly to the United States that was, by and large, conservative, especially by European standards.
Big time.
And they started seeing some trends that were very disturbing in terms of leveraging Soros money with U.S. Foreign aid money in a way that was fundamentally anti-democratic and pro-leftist. It's very, very disturbing. And I think that's one of the things that we need to uncover in all this is, what the heck are we doing with all this money? I'm not one who says that there is never a good reason for the U.S. to provide aid to a third party. But unless we have a definite reason, and that reason is an open and transparent one, these will always end up being used to promote progressive causes worldwide and to undermine our own interests and values.
Mike, you will have your answer tomorrow. And everything, we left a lot of stuff on the edit floor because I only want stuff we can absolutely nail down and show the evidence. It's happening all over the world, and you're not going to like the answer, but you're going to finally receive an answer on what was going on.
Bless you, Glenn. That's fantastic.